Hello everyone, my name is Anuj and I welcome you to Master Excel Now. Today we are going to talk about data validation. As the name suggests, validating your data. Excel gives you multiple ways of inputting your data, which is text, date, numbers, decimals, various formats for time, date, currency, etc. However, within your data, there are certain key areas where you only need a specified information. And hence, data validation comes in handy because it helps you control possibility of human error. The data that you input can be counted and calculated for future business decisions. Let's see how we can do that. So in on screen, you would see that I have salesperson, sales, product, rate, and count, sales count. Here I have a product list with keyboard, monitor, and phone. And these are a couple of few options that are available in data validation that we will check. So let's begin with the very basic of data validation. So as we see, this store is probably selling keyboard, monitor, and phone. And I want data validated here, which means I will add a drop down with these three options so that no other entry can be made. So what I do is I select my cell where I need the list, click on data, click on data validation. In the first screen where it says settings, allow any value, we will click list and then let me type keyboard, comma, monitor, and phone. Perfect. And then click OK. So here you see a small drop down, and when you click on this drop down, you would see keyboard, monitor, and phone. Now, I also have a product list where I have the items listed. So let's give that a try. For removing the data validation first, I will go back to data, click on data validation, and here clear all. Now I will click on any value, choose list, and in source, rather than typing, I am going to choose these three from the list and click OK. I have the same result. The difference between typing manually and using a list is when you're typing manually, you have already input the number of items in this case. Now, let's say you start selling mouse, you start selling electronic pens, you will have to go back, edit the data validation, input those values manually, and then update the formula wherever the data validation formula has been used. The difficulty is if it is in multiple sheets or too lengthy, you might miss some places and face an error. In the list, it becomes relatively easy because the moment you update the list, it will get updated automatically. Let's see how. So let's first go to data validation and clear. This time when I'm choosing a list and I go to source, I will select these three, plus I will probably select two more cells. And I click OK. Right now, you would see that there are three entries of keyboard, monitor, and phone, and there is a gray space bar. So here I go ahead and say mouse, and then I say elect pens. See, the formula gets updated. If I change it, oh, here I've spelled elect pens incorrectly. It is electronic pens. I go back to my formula and it is updated. So manual versus list. List is always preferable because you can edit and that edit will automatically get updated throughout. Now let's check the other options that are available, which is a whole number, a decimal, date, time, text length. So click on cell I2 and let's check a whole number. A whole number is where you do not have decimal points. So when you go to data validation, click on any value and select whole number, it will ask you between. So there are a couple of operators. Between is when you have two values, a minimum and a maximum. Then you can restrict, not between. So any value which is lower than the minimum or higher than the maximum, equal to, which is exactly equal to, not equal to is not equal to, which is, for example, you've written 100 and should not be 100, and so on. There are a couple of operators that you could use. Let's try between. So I'm saying minimum value has to be 5 and maximum has to be 50. Now, the rule is minimum 5, maximum 50. So if I enter 6, it is acceptable. But what if I enter 4? It gives me an error. I click on retry. Rather than 4, let's say 48. It's acceptable. 58, not acceptable. So this is how the whole numbers work. Decimals. Let's go to data validation. When we click on any value, choose decimal. Again, we are going to use between to explain. So let's say the minimum value is 0.99 and the maximum value is 4.99. And I click OK. So in decimals, let's try 0.56. It's an error. If I type 1, which is greater than 0.99, acceptable. If I type 3.65, acceptable. If I type 5.01, not acceptable because our upper value is 4.99. Okay. So what if I enter 3 different digit values? So I say 4.555. Because it is still under the acceptable limit of 4.99, it is going to take it. What happens if I say 4.999? Because it is greater than the acceptable value of 4.9, right? Date. So there are a lot of places in your data where you want to use a date range. So let's say last 2 months, and you're entering, attendance when the person came in, the day he came in, right? So attendance. Now we go to date, click on data validation, choose date. Now I want all the people, the date range from 1st of July 2024 till 31st of August 2024. I click OK. So any date within this range will be acceptable. If I say 7/7/2024, it will accept. But if I say 1st of June 2024, they give me an error. Similarly, if I say 31st of August 2024, it will accept. But if I say 1st of September, it will give me an error. Perfect. Then you have time. So now you want to input the time that the individual clocked in and clocked out. So again, we are going to use between. So I want it to be 0900 AM, and this is my clock in time, and the clock out time, let's say, is 0600 PM. Okay. So let's say if I say 8:55 PM, it'll give me an error. But if I say 9:10 AM, it'll accept. If I say 7 PM, it'll give me an error. But if I say 5:45 PM, it'll accept. Next, we have text length. Text length is critical because when you're typing free comments, it can go to any length. And the more the text, slowly and gradually your data becomes heavy. Your movement, your cell movement, your formula calculation, auto refresh, everything will slow down. So I want to restrict the data or the characters entered. Hence, I would click on data validation. Any value, I click on text length, and I give it a between. So I say minimum 10 and maximum 20, and I click OK. Now, let's say I have I want to type a name, let's say Ajay. It'll give me an error. But if I say Ajay sold 10 monitors, it is greater than 20. Ajay sold 10. Acceptable. So the total number of characters has to be within that range. Options that are there in data validation. For example, input message. It's one of the magic things that you could use. So here is what we do. Now I want, whenever somebody is entering sales count, let's say sales count is the total count of sales, which total to a sales value of 800. Now here I click on sales count. I go to data validation. I have a drop down, right? That is one of the options. But I want probably to have the individual input the sales count and enter their employee ID so that I know who is doing the entries. So here I would say employee ID, which is going to be the title, and I would add, please add your employee ID at the end of sales count followed by a hash, and I click OK. So now when the person who's entering sales count clicks on the cell, he or she gets a notification, a small message. Please add your employee ID at the end of sales count followed by a hash, right? So this can help remind the individual constantly of what needs to go. So we saw a couple of errors while we were working. So for example, in whole number, if I type 52, it gives you an error, right? So there are three different options that you could use to inform the person of the mistake that they are doing. So we go back to data validation, and our settings were 5 and 50, right? So first to stop, I will say stop. Error messages value has to be between 5 and 50. Please check and correct. Now, let's copy this because we're going to use it everywhere. And we click OK. Now we go to cell C2. The same rule. We go to data validation, go to alerts. Instead of stop, we say warning. We paste our message, and in title, we say warning. And click OK. Now we go to cell D2. Again, click on data validation. Instead of warning, we go to info. We say info, type the same data message and click OK. Let's delete the value. Now, if I were to enter a value 4 and it is for stop, the moment I click enter, it says value has to be between 5 and 50. Please check and correct. So I say retry. I say 55. I can keep doing retry until I get it correct, or I can cancel. There is no other option. In a whole number 2, cell C2. Let's try 4 and hit enter. Here it's a warning. So value has to be between 5 and 50. Please check and correct. Now here the user gets a choice whether he wants to enter 4 or correct it. So if he says continue as a yes, 4 will get accepted. Let's try 55 and hit enter. Again, the same message and a choice. If he says yes, the value of 55 will get accepted. However, if he says no, he can correct the information, let's say 48. The value 3, where we had info. So let's enter, let's say 88. Now here it says value is between 5 and 50. Please check and correct. But it is not a choice. The moment you click OK, it will get accepted. If you have to edit it, You have to go back and make a manual change. Let's say this. Again, it gives you the warning, or sorry, the information, but the moment you click OK, it gets accepted. So to summarize, in stop, the value will not be accepted if it is outside the range. In warning, the value will be accepted if you say continue yes. However, if you say no, it will give you the option to correct the value and then go ahead. In case 3, it informs you that the value is wrong, it's outside the range, but will accept it. So guys, that's pretty much that I have today for data validation. I am really thankful and happy for your comments and suggestions. Please continue sending them across to us. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel. We look forward for your continuation, participation, and support. Thank you. Have a nice day.